Opening up the Locked On 49ers mailbag today. Some follow-up questions about our podcast yesterday involving the 49ers offseason plan. Maybe I think we should dive a little bit deeper into why a coach would leave the San Francisco 49ers. We've had some good conversations there on social media. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making us your first listen every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's what we do here. 5 days a week, Croc. Both of us.
5 days a week. Hey, and we don't even have to do 5 days a week, right? I mean, we could do 4 days a week now because of the offseason. Yeah. And we're like, heck nah, man, we got to give the people what they want.
Off-season is the real season. The actual season is the off-season, man, because that's easy because you've just got games after games. You're talking about games. The off-season is more fun, man, because you can go down any rabbit hole you want, as we do here. And both of us have 2 shows on the network as well. So we're not just doing 5 podcasts a week. Locked On 49ers. We're doing 10 podcasts a week each here on the network. The Locked On NFL Draft podcast, co-hosted by Eric Crocker. The Peacock and Williamson NFL show, co-hosted by me. So we appreciate all you guys listening to multiple shows if you do. And thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. And I know so many of you do. On Monday, we didn't record Sunday night, Croc. So our Monday podcast went up a little bit later in the morning before lunchtime, and there's people that are like, whoa, what's going on here? Why is there not a podcast in the morning? And I love seeing that, because that means people want it. People are waiting for it, and it literally is their first listen every day. So appreciate it.
I like the conversation that it drives, between us and the fans. And, I think, we do a pretty good job of, if we don't answer it right then, we answer it on the podcast, but just the fan engagement or listeners engagement, I think that's something that I definitely appreciate and is new to me. I haven't had that type of engagement before joining this show. I mean, obviously it's just topics or people responding to my tweets, but in a sense it's something we talk about on the show, and then immediately, in an hour, after everybody wakes up in the morning, we get comments and we get other people's opinions, and I think that's pretty cool.
What's crazy is when we post a podcast like that, that's in the middle of the day, and less than the podcast is long, that timing we get someone commenting on it. Less than 30 minutes later is already someone talking about it, and that's what happened today. And a lot of folks brought up the Wes Welker conversation, and we thought maybe there was a little something more to it. And I know there's been some rumblings out there and some whispers that maybe Scangarello, I always forget his name wrong. Scangarello or Scangarello? I don't know.
I think it's Scangarello.
Scangarello, right? Yeah. And Wes Welker. Was there a falling out there with maybe Coach Kyle Shanahan? Were they going to be gone no matter what? And some listeners brought up that Wes Welker had talked about his family as maybe being a reason why he's going to go take the job. That is a lateral move, wide receivers coach to wide receivers coach with the Miami Dolphins under Mike McDaniel. And it just doesn't pass the smell test to me, Croc, not because I don't think that Wes Welker doesn't love his family, want to be closer to his family. I'm sure every coach wants to, but just coaching in the NFL is such a different thing, right? It's a nomadic life being in the league. And even if you're Wes Welker and you go back to Miami, your whole goal in your career as a coach is to get the next best job. So like the best thing that can happen for you and your family is you get the next job and you go be an offensive coordinator in another different city the next year anyway, right? So I don't know if I just feel like there has to be something else going on there. And sure, Wes Welker would love to coach near his family, but do you get the vibe that there's something else going on with the 49ers and the coaching staff and so many coaches eager to leave in some ways? And Kyle Shanahan not blocking a lateral move from Wes Welker because he's blocked moves in the past. He didn't try to block this one.
I think Kyle Shanahan is an acquired taste. Are you a beer drinker? You are a beer drinker. I know you drink a specific type of beer, right?
I'm a hazy IPA guy these days.
Yeah.
I don't usually go for the malty ones. I like either the lighter beers, the IPAs, the Pilsners, Kolsch style beers I like a lot, the refreshing ones. But I also like stouts as well. So I like to go the nitro stout route, which is like, the darkest and the lightest of the beers. I don't like the middle, the brown ales as much, but that's,
See, but you have like this taste. You know exactly what it is that you're looking for, exactly what you like, right? It seems very specific. I don't drink beer at all. I feel like it's kind of an acquired taste, and I just never was able to kind of develop that aspect of my grown-uphood or my manhood.
yeah.
And I think Kyle Shanahan, I think he likes his coaches a very specific way. Just like I think he likes everything in general a very specific way. But I also think that it takes a very different person. I don't want to say different in a bad way, but it takes a certain person to like to be around Kyle Shanahan as opposed to just tolerate being around him. Right. I think some people will talk to you about Bill Belichick. And there are some players. I remember watching that clip of, I think it was Randy Moss going into his office and inviting him to a Halloween costume party. And you got to see some personality from Bill Belichick. And, but it's like, do all players have that same type of rapport with Belichick? Right. And I think with Kyle Shanahan, we've heard some. It seems kind of similar, where he feels like a little. We've called him this old school throwback coach. Debo Samuel has an amazing relationship with him. Walks into his office. They talk about anything and everything. They've talked about everything you can imagine. Debo said it, I believe it was on the Mailbag podcast. Very open relationship. They're cool. I don't know if Ayuk and Shanahan had that same relationship. Now, when you're a player, that's your boss. So regardless of how he is, you got to deal with it. But he might not be your cup of tea. And I think that might be the same thing for him as a coach and with his coaches, where some coaches tolerate it. Hey, this is my job. I have a job to do. I come in, I do this, I do that, whatever. And some coaches probably love him, and some are like, hey, the moment I can get out of here, yeah, let me go to Florida. Let me go to Miami. And let me say it's because of family. Not saying that's not the case, but let me look for a reason to part ways there.
And I could see it being a little bit of both, right? And maybe that's it. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to a lot of these things. And there's also the idea that, yeah, like the doghouse thing. Was the doghouse all Kyle? Was the doghouse actually Wes Welker? There's a theory that Wes Welker, and I don't know where any of this stuff originates, but sometimes the listeners come up with this stuff, and I'm like, where did you hear this? And who's putting this out there? Was it a report? And are people? Is there an actual source to some of this stuff? Talking about the Ayuk, not or no, the Wes Welker
didn't want Ayuk,
like the Ayuk or the Trey Lance picks,
right? And that's interesting to me because I've been around a ton of coaches, a ton of position hell, I've coached, and not one time have I ever heard anyone or seen someone upset about a draft pick. And I'm talking about NFL guys, like NFL position coaches were like, oh man, I hated that pick. I'm disgruntled. Like, I want to leave. Right. Like, that's not how coaches think typically.
right?
Right. I know myself, a lot of my buddies and coaches I know around the league and coaches I've just been around at professional levels. It's typically oh man, like you feel like you can always get the most out of a player. You always see the potential and the upside. They talk about Kyle Shanahan drawing up plays for Trey Lance and things like that on the flight. Your mind already starts working on all the different ways you could utilize a guy. So to have a coach I haven't seen those reports aside from one of our listeners commenting, in the thread, but I have a hard time imagining Wes Welker was disgruntled because Ayuk and Trey Lance were drafted. Typically, coaches don't care to that extent. They have a job to do. It's not like, they drafted Trey Lance, I'm out of here. Like, I think there's zero. I don't want to say 0% because anything can happen. And if that is the type of coach that Wes Welker is, then that is a coach that I don't want around. I want guys that are going to be uplifting and get the most out of our players that we have picked for them. Coach them up. That's your job. And Ayuk is very talented. Very talented. Unless Ayuk was a person behind the scenes where he's just full of himself and you just can't stand to be around that type of player. I don't see, or Trey Lance as well, where he comes in and he's just like has this smug attitude and you don't like to, and it's like, oh, why'd they draft this guy? Like, oh my goodness. If it ain't something like that, most coaches, they're fine with players regardless. Like, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, and I can see maybe him giving a report because I'm sure the coaches, I'm sure you have a wide receiver coach cross-check the wide receivers you're thinking about drafting in the draft. Maybe he didn't have a high grade on him or didn't like him as much, or who knows, maybe Welker's coaching his receivers to run routes a certain way, and Kyle Shanahan's very particular. He wants it done a different way. Maybe they're clashing that way. I don't know. Or maybe there's no clash at all. I have no idea. But and these reports are all unsubstantiated, but I did see one screenshot that was like texts or DMs, and it's, I don't know who it is talking, but it was from October, and basically the conversation was that there's going to be changes in the coaching staff this season, and these messages are from October, and it said Scangarello and Welker are going to be out. And it's from October, right? But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's photoshopped. I don't know where it came from. There's no solid sources for it. It's just something I ran across and I saw, and a lot of people are running with it, and we get asked about it. So I wanted to address it, and just, I can't spread any of this stuff that we can't say for certainty that it's any one thing or another. But it's the fact that you would not, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you don't let a coach that you really want to be around, that maybe you want to move up in your own organization, you don't just let that guy go for nothing. And you don't let him take that lateral move, I wouldn't think.
And typically, a player does not have that much of an impact over you wanting to be there.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen that. Oh my goodness, they drafted this guy. I'm out of here. Like, what?
Can't coach that guy.
No,
you're right.
like, no.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's wild. I remember in Rex Ryan, it was the day of the draft, and Antonio Cromartie and I, we were sitting in a meeting room. It was a few of us DBs were sitting around. Rex Ryan walks in, and Rex is like, "Hey, who do you guys think they're going to take tonight?" I'm like, "Aren't you supposed to know? You're the head coach." You know what I'm saying?
Shouldn't you be in the draft room right now?
Right. But and maybe it was the day before the draft, but it was around that, like either the day before or the day of. But he didn't know who they were going to take. But his thing was, whoever they take, I'm going to coach them. Okay, they end up taking D. Milliner, Sheldon Richardson, and Geno Smith. Coach them. You coach them up. Like, it's not, I don't want that guy. I'm trying to get out of New York now or Jersey now. Like, no. You coach the players. And I've never seen, oh yeah, these coaches, they're out of here because if they didn't like something, they didn't like Kyle Shanahan, because that's the big dog. That's the head guy in charge. And if you want out of an organization, it'll be because of him and how you think that he's running things on a day-to-day basis as opposed to a player.
Maybe Rex Ryan should have cared more, because those guys might have got him fired. Going with Geno Smith as the starting quarterback, that didn't turn out too well. Maybe he should have taken his own job in his own hands. All right, so let's move on to another question from a listener about the wide receiver position and when the right time is to draft those players, and some comments from Richard Sherman talking about Stephon Gilmore maybe headed west. Let's get into that after I let the listeners know about BetOnline.net, the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. Football is over this season, but that doesn't mean you can't still bet on football, draft props, Super Bowl futures. Basketball is in full steam, both pro and college hoops. The March Madness is about to be upon us in college basketball, which is all kinds of fun to bet on in any sort of way. From the latest odds, totals, and player performance props, BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports, not only wagering, but scores, even podcasts and news this season. Not just football and basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, your Vegas casino games as well. So head over to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's go to an email from Andrew. He says, "Hey, P. Croc, interesting point on a podcast a few days ago. I think he's talking about our off-season plan at wide receiver for the 49ers. You can find on all of our podcast feeds. He says that the second day of the draft has been yielding a lot of great wide receivers in recent years. Debo, Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Michael Thomas, etc. And considering the bust-to-hit ratio for first-round wide receivers, is this position going the way of running back, where it's getting less and less worthwhile selecting a first-round wide receiver? What do you think, Croc?"
I agree. Well, not because of buzz factor or anything like that, but just you can get very productive guys in the second round. Now, obviously, everything has a value to it. So you don't want to say, I'm sitting here at pick 18. I'm in the first round. I got Treylon Burks here. I love him. 6'3", 230 pounds, runs a 4.3, but Now let's pass on him for this day two guy, just because the likelihood or the analytical aspect of it, second round guy is going to be as productive and better. Like, no, I don't think you pass on a guy that you love and that you really like. But there is something to that. And I've been saying that I would rather take a day two guy as opposed to taking a receiver top 10. That's for sure.
It's definitely not as severe as running back, because running back for me, I just wouldn't consider it. It's not going to help you win games.
And
But
they don't
wide
play as
receiver,
long.
yeah, they don't
It's
play
like
as long. You don't
running
play
backs,
as
it's like you got the first year.
right?
It's like, I mean, you got the first like few years, and then it's like you don't want to pay them a second contract. Receivers, you don't mind paying them a second contract.
Yeah,
Running backs,
receivers
you're like,
still
man,
get better. Yeah,
I pay him this $80 million, and I know he's about to fall off any day now.
yeah, it's crazy. And multiple wide receivers play at a time. You can play multiple talented guys, so there's a lot of value there because you need a lot of wide receivers. And if you hit on one, we saw what it did for the Cincinnati Bengals offense, right? So you're not going to turn down a Jamar Chase level talent or a Justin Jefferson talent. But the hit rate isn't fantastic in round one, and it's almost as good in round two as it is in round one. And some years it seems like it's a lot better in round two than it is in round one. So ideally, yes, you would target day two, I think, for wide receiver, second round, especially even in the third round. But that doesn't mean you want to pass on a good player in the first round that's a wide receiver just because it's a position of strength maybe later on. I think ideally, in a perfect world, yes, maybe you draft your wide receivers in round two and you go quarterback, defensive and pass rushers, maybe offensive line, corners, those types of things in round one. But it's not like running back where you just don't want to consider it in round one. But yeah, absolutely. It's where the value is right now at wide receiver, because every year it seems like it's such a good class and it's so deep. And this year, I mean, what? You could probably name 5 wide receivers right now that you think are going to be pretty darn good NFL starters that are probably going to be available in the second round of the 2022 draft, right?
Yeah, just using last year as an example, when you talked about Jamar Chase and how terrific he was, I would not have taken him, and clearly I probably would have been wrong. But I would have drafted Penei Sewell, and then I would have probably drafted his teammate Terrace Marshall in the second round. That's where my mind would have been, and I do believe that Terrace Marshall would have a much better rookie year if he played with the Cincinnati Bengals as opposed to Carolina and whatever the hell was going on there at the quarterback position. So. We'll never know how that whole thing would have played out, but I know I would have went more of that direction than drafting Chase number 5 overall. And again, I might have been wrong because Chase turned out to be terrific, which I thought he would have been a good football player. And maybe you don't get as much production out of a Terrace Marshall, but can Terrace Marshall still be a 1,000-yard receiver? And we've seen T. Higgins, he was a day two guy, 1,000-yard receiver. We've seen Tyler Boyd on that same team. He's a 1,000-yard receiver, round two guy. So Bengals have been good with round two guys. Their offensive line is the thing that sucks.
Yeah.
But do you pass up on a Chase and
And
take it so?
a lot of it is your landing spot, and you have a good quarterback throwing to those receivers. And do you is your quarterback is your offense coached well by the coaching staff too? So there's a lot of things going into a wide receiver becoming great early in his career. And I think in all of those places you can see why DK Metcalf fits so good with Russell Wilson. You can see what happened with Debo in year 3, because Debo wasn't this guy 2 years early in his first 2 years. He was good, but he wasn't at this level, right? Devontae Adams, you saw how he grew as a wide receiver. And it took him a while with Aaron Rodgers to where they're at an unstoppable level. Cooper Kupp taking an extra step to this year. He went from a guy that's good and got open to a guy that had one of the most ridiculous wide receiver seasons of all time. So I think landing spot is huge for those types of players, and so much goes
Huge.
into wide receivers making a lot of plays. So you have to have a lot of other things in place.
I had a mother. She was talking to me about her son and everything, and she knows I do the whole podcast stuff. And her son, he plays baseball, and she was like, "Hey, I'm a big Razorback fan. What do you? They love Razorbacks. What do you think is going to happen with Treylon Burks? I've been looking at some mock drafts, and they're talking about him going to the Cleveland Browns." She was like, "I don't want him to go there and play with Baker Mayfield." That's how much these people love the Razorbacks. Like, they're worried about their very own Treylon Burks, who's from up the street in Warren, which is about 15 minutes away from me. They're worried about him going to Cleveland. But she's saying, "I know if he goes to a good quarterback, he'll do good. I'm scared if he has to go to Cleveland." Just little old white lady. But she wants Treylon Burks to go to the right spot. And she talked about the quarterback.
That's awesome. I love that so much. Like caring about the young man, the local boy making good.
They
You gotta get
love
Treylon
their
Burks.
Razorbacks. They love Razorbacks out here. It's like I've never seen anything like it. I know it's probably like that in Alabama and other places in the South, But in comparison to coming from California to an environment like this, we don't sniff it. Not even 49ers fan base.
Like Californians don't care at all about college football, especially. And high school probably ranks higher than college in California, but not even close to what's going on over there. I mean, that's crazy.
Oh no.
And Traylon Burks, though, you got to have him come work out at your facility when it's finished.
I know he just started following me the other day. He messaged me and he was like, he has a few words and I was like, just keep doing your thing or whatever. But yeah, eventually I'm gonna have him come through.
Yeah, wide receiver 1, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
And not because he follows me, but just
Right.
think he's
Just because he's a
yeah,
beast.
yeah, beast.
And he is a beast. The more I watch him, he's like, ooh, he's scary. Next, we've got a Jimmy W trade idea. And what about Richard Sherman talking about maybe Stephon Gilmore coming west, maybe signing with the San Francisco 49ers in free agency? With the ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible. It's been impossible for a while. There's an amazing amount of cars out there in the world I mean, I'm looking at traffic right now out in front of my house. I have this big window, cars driving by all the time. How could it be even remotely possible for a local chain store to have all the parts for those vehicles right now in stock? And you know what? They do not. But you know who does have all those parts in stock? That is rockauto.com. Save time and money when using rockauto.com. They are a family owned business. They've been helping do it yourselfers fix their vehicles for 20 years. And it could be anything, something simple. Go make sure your wiper blades are on point. Get yourself some motor oil, maybe some jumper cables in
Dude,
your
they
car.
have carpet. They have carpet, and I have kids. Peacock, I know you have kids. Sometimes they make stains, they spill stuff in the car all the time. Well, rockauto.com, you can replace the carpet in your vehicle.
My cat threw up on a road trip once. We go to go visit the family. Can't leave the cat at home for more than a day at a time, and the stinking cat throws up in the car during the drive. So yeah, go get yourself some carpet at rockauto.com if you have those needs. And Croc knows what that's like with the family life. They have everything you could possibly need. Also, brake parts, tail lamps, whatever it is. So go explore the easy to use website today at rockauto.com. Right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Here's a quick trade idea via email. By the way, the email is lockedon49ers@gmail.com. We don't hit the emails quite as often, but I do try to read all of them, and I appreciate them even if I don't respond to you, whether that's email, whether it's in the YouTube comments, whether that is on Twitter. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the conversation that we have with our listeners. Sean says, hey, Brian and Croc, wanted to run an idea by you to see what you thought. Jimmy and the 2 third-round picks we got for McDaniel leaving for those, so sending those picks and Jimmy W to the Washington Commanders for their first round pick, number 11 overall. They get a quarterback. We sweeten the deal with picks we wouldn't have necessarily had before. Could get a top player at 11 or trade back, recoup more picks, and possibly a Tyler Linderbaum or Zion Johnson later in the draft. What are your thoughts there, Croc? Do you like where?
Well, repeat that. What was that proposal again?
Essentially, the trade would be the 2 third-round picks the 49ers got for McDaniel leaving. So a comp pick this year, comp pick next year in round 3, plus Jimmy for the number 11 overall pick. So basically, Sean is just looking for free ways to go from Jimmy Garoppolo to the number 11 pick in this draft. Looking at it from the Washington Commanders, I would not do that deal if I was Washington. Probably. I wouldn't be talking about pick number 11 for Jimmy Garoppolo. If I was even to sniff a first round pick for Jimmy G, it'd probably be a future pick with some conditions applied to it. And even then, I might still ask for something to sweeten it from the 49ers. But if the Niners wanted to get a 1, they'd probably have to add something to it. Who knows? Maybe a comp 3 could potentially be enough.
I think 2/3 and Jimmy for your first. That would be tempting for sure. Even if I
The
wasn't planning on giving up the 11th overall pick.
the thirds are late, so they're, after pick 100, and one of them's next year's third. which a lot of people say would be worth a fourth this year. So it's kind of like
Okay.
if
A
it was
third
all
and a
this year's
fourth.
picks, it'd be like a late third, 102 overall or whatever it is. Same spot the Niners drafted Ambry Thomas in last year, basically. And, the value of a late fourth plus Jimmy. Is that enough to get you to number 11? And for me, it wouldn't be enough to move. Essentially, you're moving from a second round pick, which I would offer for Jimmy potentially in a certain situation, all the way to a first. Is a late third and a late fourth enough? I don't think it is enough. I like where Sean's head's at though, trying to get that free first round pick.
I think so. I listen, Sean. I would do that if I'm Washington, because at the end of the day, I've said, how important is it to you to have a winning season? And we talked about what the Washington Commanders as a franchise, what they've done over the years. They haven't had a playoff win since the early '90s, like '91, I believe it is. I think they won the Super Bowl that year. They've only had 2 double-digit win seasons since like 2006 or something like that. So what's it worth to you to put yourself in position to win, and you get to recoup 2 more players even from that, And yeah, okay, they're not 11th overall, but you need a quarterback. I think it's actually a sweet deal. Would you say no? I'd rather just do Jimmy in the second straight up if you're watching the Commanders, as opposed to Jimmy 2 late thirds and the 11th.
Yes, absolutely. I would keep 11 and trade my second round pick, or even if I was willing to do a first, it would be a future first.
Yeah, but what if
I
49ers are like, take it or leave it? That's what we
yeah,
want. Take it or leave it.
I wouldn't talk about 11.
So you're gonna take that off the table and risk having to play with Taylor Heineke?
How about this? How much better is Jimmy Garoppolo than Marcus Mariota, who's a free agent that you don't have to give up draft picks for, that will probably sign a deal that costs less, at least in year one, than Jimmy? Although whatever team trades for Jimmy would probably do
They restructure it, but I mean,
restructure, and so keep that number down. But so
it
basically,
would
let's
still
say
wouldn't be as. I mean, Mariota would still be much cheaper, probably by
right,
about
yeah,
10 million,
yeah. What if you
if not
said,
more.
okay, so you're Washington, you say, okay, no, I'm not going to give up a pick for Jimmy. I'm just going to sign Marcus Mariota. What's the difference between going from Mariota to Jimmy G? What's that worth in draft picks?
I think it's a few throws a game that lead to wins. And I'm not saying Mariota can't. I mean, we saw him go to the playoffs with the Tennessee Titans. So and they beat. Gosh, they beat Kansas City with Alex Smith. Was that Alex Smith's last year with Kansas City?
I can't remember that far back. Those memories have been erased from my mind.
Yeah, well, typically I can't remember either. Too many hits to the head, but for some reason I know they went to the playoffs, and I know somebody blew a lead, and I think it was Kansas City with Alex Smith, and like they had no business losing to Mariota because he did look bad. But some people might say that about the 49ers. Now the Dallas Cowboys didn't blow a lead, but I still think probably the fan base is like, how'd you lose to Jimmy Garoppolo?
That must have been 2017 season.
Yeah,
So yeah,
maybe.
Tennessee
Yeah,
was 9-6 that year.
yeah, because they would have had to be because Patrick Mahomes would have had to be a rookie.
Man, Mary numbers aren't that good. He had 15 interceptions and 13 touchdowns that year, even though
Oh,
they went 9-6.
Jimmy's better than that.
How's that possible? I don't remember that. He was his second year, the year before, he was on the right path. His second year was his best year in the NFL at 23 years old, 2016. They went 8-7, so winning record there. 3,400 pass yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The next year, very similar passing numbers, except for the interceptions. He had more picks than touchdown passes. That's wild.
Yeah,
I didn't realize his touchdown to
Vrabel did a good
interception
job.
ratio was so bad. So yeah, even more, much more prone to turn the ball over than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo's big knock.
And what about that playoff game? Do you see the numbers on that? It was a weird game. Didn't Mariota throw a touchdown pass to himself or something? Something weird happened, or threw a pass himself, picked up a key first down. You don't remember that game? It was really weird. It was like a night game, playoffs.
I'm looking it up right now. I don't remember it. I for some reason I do not remember that game at all. Let's see. We've got 2017. So January of 2018
Yes.
against Kansas City. Tennessee beat Kansas City by
Wait, what?
1.
Tennessee
Yeah,
beat
so
Kansas City.
yeah, Tennessee beat Kansas City by 1, 22-21 in the first round of the playoffs, January 6th,
Yes.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah, that was okay. So I was right. My
Yeah,
memory served me correct.
you nailed it.
And what
In
way?
that
What?
game,
Go ahead.
he was 19 of 31, so 61.29%, 205 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception.
And I feel like he threw like. Did he run it? Does he pop up in the stat sheet for like touchdown reception or rushing touchdown or something?
He had 8 rushing attempts for 46 yards, no touchdowns. He
What
had
about
1
passing?
touchdown reception. He had a 6-yard touchdown reception in that game. He did.
See, yeah,
He
it
nailed
was
it, Croc.
like he threw it. It got batted back to him. He caught it and ran in for a touchdown.
So he accounted for 3 touchdowns in that game. How
Yeah.
could you not want that on your roster? I've never seen
No,
Jimmy G do that.
yeah, well, Jimmy doesn't have to typically, but no, that was a wild win, and it just Mariota kind of stunk, and I think after that, Tannehill took his spot like the next year.
All right, I'm going to save the Richard Sherman stuff for Winky Wednesday podcast this week because it's a good
Hold on,
question. What?
do you want to keep? Do you want to keep? That's what the fans want to know. The listeners want to know.
Yeah.
You're taking that Mariota, 13 touchdown passes, 15 interceptions, over Jimmy Garoppolo because he's cheaper. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, because at pick 11, I can also draft Malik Willis, and I'd take Mariota and Willis over Jimmy G.
No, they got Riverboat Ron. He does not have time. He's in like year 3. He has to make the playoffs or he's gone.
If I'm willing to give up 11, I'm probably calling Houston, about Deshaun
It's gonna
Watson.
cost you 3 11s for Deshaun Watson.
I would rather do that. I would give up if you're talking ones, if you're talking pick number 11, you want to pick that high, I'm shopping in a different store. You know what I mean?
And you're gonna lose. You're gonna keep losing.
I'm going to win
That's
it
what
all.
I'm John Lynch. I'm John Lynch,
I'm
and you're Dan Snyder or whoever their GM is. You're gonna keep losing. You got to take Jimmy. Take it or leave it. We'll give you 2/3. You give us 11. We give you Jimmy. You're gonna go to the playoffs, Ron. Think about it, Ron. You're going to be a playoff team. Look at your stout defense you have. You're getting Chase Young back. You still got thirds. You talked about Ron. We just heard you talk about the late round receiver, the day 2 receivers, Ron.
No, I'll say, hey, John, I appreciate all that. We're going to offer 42. We think that's a fair offer. We'll let you think about that. And since we know you're not going to get an offer higher than 42, we'll let you call us back tomorrow and accept.
Okay, I think I lost that negotiation.
Then I think and that's where, because I think there might be multiple teams that are saying, okay, yeah, we'll go to a 2, and then the Niners have that 2 in their pocket, and they say, okay, what about this? Can we send you that 3, that late comp 3, and then you give us next year's first, and we'll put some conditions in there that Jimmy G has to start, has to be active for 8 weeks or something, and if not, then that becomes next year's second. So the Niners would be gambling. They could end up with a next year's second, but they could end up with a next year's first in that case. And you get a team to maybe go above that second round pick and get a future first. That's the only way I could see that negotiation getting to the place where a team gives you a first round pick.
I think you're going to lose, Ron. I think you're going to lose.
That's why he's Riverboat Ron. He will gamble that. He's a man of character. He will gamble on it, and he won't go higher than he thinks he should. Although Ron's probably not the guy that's going to be in the negotiations. He'll be a part of it. Who is the GM? Why can't I think of the GM with Washington?
It's the guy from the 49ers, right? That was with the Lions. They just got him. 49ers got comp pick for him.
Mayhew. That's why they had. That's why they have Ambry Thomas. It was the Mayhew comp pick, right? Or no?
Right, so
maybe the Mayhew comp pick is this year because Niners have 2 comp picks in the third this year, right?
Yeah, I mean they got all kinds of comp picks.
They can give them the comp pick.
Shout out to the 49ers hiring all the diverse coaches.
Yes. First of all, thank you.
Putting them in position to be successful.
I wonder if this is illegal. If the Niners send the comp pick they got for Mayhew back to Mayhew, because that's like some collusion almost there. Because that wasn't a Washington pick. That pick is free from the league. They're like, here's a pick that came out of nowhere. Poof. Here's a 3rd round pick. And they're like, hey, good job, Washington. Here. How about we send you a draft pick? They're like, okay, cool. That seems like it could be a little collusion
thanks
there.
for hiring them. Yeah,
Yeah.
now there could be collusion. No, you got to give him the one for Mike McDaniel. Give him that one.
I didn't even think about the Mayhew connection with Washington. That makes
Mm.
everything even more likely. That conversation is open. There's a line of communication with the 49ers front office and the Washington front office with Mayhew. Mayhew was there when they acquired Jimmy G. He was there when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. He probably has a certain amount of respect for Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback.
People
That
that
makes
have been
it
around
even more
him,
likely.
the people that have been around him in a room with him, know what he's been through, go through, plays through, all that. They have a higher level of respect for Jimmy Garoppolo, the quarterback. I think it makes it a little bit more likely. Ron,
All right. So I'm Ron Rivera in this, and Martin
yeah.
Mayhew just took your offer for the 11. He took it out of my hands. So
Uh,
congratulations. Good job, Sean. You got it. Pick number
yeah,
11,
Jimmy's
going to the San Francisco 49ers for Jimmy W. and 2 comp thirds.
Yeah, we want to thank Jimmy for his services, and he's been nothing but awesome to us. Nothing but awesome. Is that I got to get my John Lynch voice down.
Yeah, that was bad. You got to work on that one. John Lynch is tough.
Okay, let me do Kyle Shanahan.
Okay.
Jimmy was great, and when last time we saw him, I know we can win with him. And, he's gonna do awesome things with the Washington Commanders, and we appreciate everything that Jimmy has done throughout his time here, and we're happy to see him go to a place that I think they have they can establish a winning culture with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Coach Shanahan, why did you force Wes Welker and Rich Scangarello out the door?
um, those things, it's just football, and great opportunity for Mike McDaniel over there, but these guys aren't here anymore, so I don't really want to speak on them anymore.
Good job. You nailed it. Croc nailed his Kyle Shanahan. Let us know what you think at Eric_Crocker at BD Peacock. We appreciate you guys. Little Winky Wednesday tomorrow. We'll dive deeper into failure theory on Twitter's question about Gilmore. Is Richard Sherman in the know about Gilmore potentially going west, maybe to the Seahawks or the 49ers? And another interesting free agent name he brings up that I actually kind of like as a fit for the 49ers. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On 49ers. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. For your second listen, go to Eric Crocker, co-hosting the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I am co-hosting the Peacock and Williamson NFL shows. Also, daily. You can find those right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.